The convent had stood abandoned for more than 30 years, according to municipal records. Built in the late 18th century, it had served first as a convent, then an orphanage, and finally an improvised warehouse, until no one wanted to take responsibility for it. Damp had eaten into the walls, the windows were shattered, and weeds choked the courtyards. The religious icons vanished one by one. But one thing remained untouched, the door at the end. No one knew where it led. Daniel Salgado had known the place since childhood. His father worked as a maintenance supervisor for the municipality and sometimes brought him along to inspect abandoned buildings. But Daniel had never gone into the convent alone. Until that afternoon. He was 34 and worked as a photographer for a small local newspaper. His boss had asked him for photos of the property because the town council planned to sell the land to a construction company. "I need interiors, something that shows the condition it's in." Daniel accepted because he knew the building. Or so he thought. He arrived shortly after 5 in the afternoon, under a sky heavy with clouds, a thin rain beginning to fall over the town. He parked his truck in front of the old iron gate and stepped out with a camera, a flashlight, and a backpack. The padlock on the entrance was rusted, but unlocked. That struck him as strange. He pushed the gate open. The screech of metal echoed across the courtyard. "What a lovely place," he muttered, though the joke fell flat. Inside it smelled of wet earth, rotting wood, and something else, something like burnt wax. Daniel switched on his flashlight. The main corridor was lined with doors, small rooms to the right, an old dining hall with boarded windows to the left. At the far end stood the chapel. He began taking photographs. Flash, a wall stained with damp. Flash, a collapsed staircase. Flash, a crucifix lying on the floor. When he checked the camera screen, he froze. One of the photographs showed something he hadn't seen while taking it, a dark figure at the far end of the corridor. Daniel looked up immediately. No one was there. Just a shadow, probably. He stepped back to the same spot and took another photograph. Nothing. He kept walking. The chapel was in far worse shape than he remembered, the altar was gone, and pews had been stacked against one wall. On the floor, faint circular marks were still visible, as if candles had been placed in the exact same spots for years. Daniel crouched to photograph them. Then he heard a knock. Tock. He froze. Tock. The sound came from the corridor. Daniel turned off his camera and stayed silent. Tock. This time it seemed to come from a door. Is someone there? No answer. He waited. Then came 3 more knocks. Tock, tock, tock. Daniel's stomach clenched. It wasn't the wind. The knocking came from the door at the end of the corridor, the same one he remembered from childhood. The door at the end. He approached slowly. As he moved forward, the temperature seemed to drop. When he finally reached it, he saw something he'd never noticed before. The door was covered in scratches. Not recent ones. Hundreds of them. Some looked like fingernail gouges, others had been carved with something metal. Daniel raised his flashlight. Among the marks were words, names. Dozens of them. Some nearly worn away, others perfectly legible: Maria, Esteban, Julia, Rosa, Antonio. And below all of them, a phrase written in large letters: "Do not open if you hear them calling your name." A chill ran through Daniel as he remembered something his father had told him years before, and had never wanted to explain. If you ever go into the convent, don't go to the far end. That was all his father had ever said. Daniel had always assumed it was superstition. Now he wasn't so sure. He put away his camera, ready to leave. He was about to leave when he heard a voice behind him. Daniel. He froze. It was a woman's voice, soft, very close. He turned slowly. The corridor was empty. "Daniel," the voice repeated. This time the voice came from the other side of the door. He stepped back. Rain lashed against the broken windows. "Daniel, open it." His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. It was his mother's voice. But his mother had been dead for 8 years. Daniel closed his eyes. It can't be. Then something slammed against the door from inside. Bang! Daniel jumped back. The handle began to turn, once, twice, 3 times. He tried to step away, but his foot struck something on the floor. He looked down. It was an old photograph. He picked it up. It showed a group of nuns in front of the convent. He brought his flashlight closer. In the back row stood a young woman, her face scratched out with ink. Beneath the photograph someone had written a date, 1989. And below it, a phrase that turned Daniel's blood to ice: the last time she opened the door, she went in alone. The handle stopped moving. Everything went silent. Daniel took a deep breath. Then he heard something on the other side, a slow, heavy breathing, as if someone were pressed right against the door. Then the voice spoke again. "Daniel." This time it wasn't his mother's voice. It was his own. "Daniel, open it." He backed away. The door stayed shut. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then he heard a sound he would never forget, a key turning in the lock. From the inside, Daniel ran, tearing through the corridor, out of the chapel, and across the courtyard without looking back. He shoved the gate open and jumped into his truck. He didn't stop until he reached home. At 8 that night he reviewed the photographs. He'd taken 117. Most showed empty rooms. But photograph number 83 was different. It was the door at the end. He zoomed in. There was something behind him, a tall, pale female figure standing less than 2 meters from his back. Daniel hadn't seen her. But that wasn't the worst part. In the next photograph, taken just a second later, the figure was much closer. And in the third, she was no longer behind him, she was right in front of the camera. Daniel dropped the phone. The screen stayed lit. The last photograph showed only the woman's face, eyes wide open, mouth slightly parted. And beneath her face, a single word written on the wall: tomorrow. Daniel didn't sleep that night. At 3:17 in the morning, he heard 3 knocks on his front door. Tock. 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 He lay frozen in bed. Then he heard a voice from the hallway. "Daniel." It was his mother's voice. But this time something was different. The voice was crying. "Daniel, please." He didn't answer. The knocking returned. Tock. 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 And then someone whispered from the other side of the door, "You shouldn't have taken the photograph." Daniel glanced at the table. The photograph he'd picked up at the convent was gone. And from somewhere in the house, a door began to creak open slowly. The same door at the end. The one that had never existed in his house. Daniel stood frozen in front of his bedroom door. For several seconds he couldn't breathe. The sound had been unmistakable, a door creaking open. But his house had no door in that spot. With the lights off, the hallway seemed longer than it should. Darkness stretched all the way to the living room. He could barely make out the furniture. Then he heard the creak of a hinge. Daniel grabbed his phone from the nightstand and switched on the flashlight. "Who's there?" No answer. He took a step, then another. The noise had come from the far end of the hallway. He raised the phone. The light hit a blank white wall. Nothing there. He stepped back. Then his phone screen went dark. No. He tried turning it back on. Nothing. The phone was fully charged. He pressed the button again, the screen flickered on for an instant, showing only one image, the convent door. Daniel dropped the phone. The screen went black again. And at that moment he heard a whisper. "Daniel." It came from the kitchen. He froze. The voice was identical to his mother's. But there was a difference. His mother used to say his name with warmth. This voice said it as if it were still learning how to speak. "Daniel." He backed against the wall. He didn't want to answer. He remembered the phrase carved into the door, "Do not open if you hear them calling your name." His breathing quickened. Then something struck from inside the kitchen. Once. Then again. Daniel tried the phone again. This time it worked. He ran to the living room, switched on every light, and stayed there until dawn. He didn't hear anything else. At 7 in the morning he left the house and went straight to the newspaper. He needed information about the convent. His boss, Arturo, was drinking coffee when Daniel walked in. "What happened? You look like a corpse." Daniel set the camera on the desk. "I need you to do me a favor." Arturo raised an eyebrow. "What kind of favor?" "I want to look through the old convent archives." "For the photos?" "No." Daniel hesitated. "I want to know what happened there." Arturo set down his cup. "Why?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Finally, he pulled out the photograph he'd taken inside the convent and placed it in front of him. Arturo studied it. "What am I looking at?" "The door at the end." "And?" Daniel zoomed in. "Look behind me." Arturo leaned closer to the screen. His expression changed. "Is that a person?" "Seems like it." "Was someone with you?" "No." Arturo looked at the photo again. "Maybe a worker." The building was empty. "Are you sure?" "Completely." Arturo went quiet, then opened a drawer and pulled out an old folder. "My father worked for the municipality back in the 90s. Daniel felt a knot in his stomach. Did he know the convent? He knew that place too well. He opened the folder. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings. The first was about a fire in 1989. Daniel read the headline, "3 people vanish after fire at old convent." "3 people?" he asked. Arturo nodded. 2 workers and a woman. Daniel picked up the clipping. "Who was the woman?" Arturo pointed to a photograph. Daniel felt his heart stop. It was the same woman from the photo he'd found by the door. "Who is she?" "A former caretaker." "What was her name?" Arturo dug through the papers. "Elena Vargas." Daniel read the rest. The fire had broken out at dawn. Firefighters found rooms completely destroyed, but no bodies. 3 people were declared missing. Elena Vargas, Ramon Ortega, and a man named Julian Salgado. The case was never solved. But there was something even stranger, a handwritten note in the report, "Do not remove the basement door." Daniel looked up. "A basement?" Arturo pointed to an old floor plan. "The convent has one." Daniel studied the drawing, a staircase located behind the chapel. But in the photos he'd taken, no staircase appeared anywhere. "Where is it?" "They sealed it." "Why?" Arturo took a moment to answer. "According to my father, because they found something down there." "What?" Arturo shook his head. "He never wanted to tell me." Daniel looked at the clipping again. In the corner he noticed a small photograph, an image taken after the fire. The door at the end stood open, and several people were gathered in front of it. He zoomed in. He recognized Elena Vargas, recognized 2 firefighters, and beside them stood a priest. But the priest's face was obscured by a black smudge. "Who is he?" Arturo took the paper. I don't know. Daniel pointed at the date. This was taken after the fire started. Yes. Then someone was inside after it began. Arturo didn't answer. Daniel felt something didn't add up. He picked up the camera. I'm going back. Arturo looked up. No. I need to know what's behind that door. Daniel, listen. Arturo leaned toward him. Some places don't need an explanation. I need one. Then find one in the archives. I already did. It's not enough. Daniel fell silent. Arturo lowered his voice. My father stopped talking about the convent after 1989. But one night, years later, I heard him say something in his sleep. What did he say? Arturo stared at him. He said the names kept changing. Daniel felt a chill run through him. What names? The ones on the wall. That afternoon Daniel went back to the convent. He told no one. He brought a different camera, a powerful flashlight, and a small recorder. The sky was clear. The gate stood open, just as before. He went in. This time the place felt entirely different. No wind, no animals, not even the sound of insects. The silence was absolute. Daniel walked straight toward the chapel. The door at the end was still closed. He approached. The names were still there, but something had changed. Daniel lit up the wall. Yesterday there had been dozens of names. Now there was a new one. He recognized it instantly, Daniel Salgado. His legs began to shake. The name was written just below the others, the ink still fresh. Daniel touched the wall, it was damp. He pulled his hand back, his fingers were stained dark red. It didn't look like paint. Daniel stepped back. Then he heard a noise behind the altar, something had fallen. He aimed his flashlight. There was a small metal box. He opened it. Inside he found documents, photographs, and a key. Among the papers was a folded sheet. He opened it, a list containing every name from the wall. But some had been crossed out. The last name on the list was Elena Vargas. Below it, a phrase, when the next name appears, the door will open again. Daniel looked at his own name. Then he looked at the door. The key he'd found looked ancient, with a number engraved on it, 13. At that moment he heard a sound, 3 knocks. Tock, tock, tock. Daniel slowly raised his head. The knocks came from the door, but this time not from inside. They came from the other side, as if someone were waiting for him in the corridor. Daniel stepped back. Then he heard a voice. Daniel. It was Elena, the woman from the photograph. Daniel, open the door. He didn't answer. The voice spoke again. I thought I was alone too, once. Daniel felt his skin crawl. Who are you? Silence. Then, the last one who got out. Daniel stared at the door. What's behind it? The answer took several seconds. Us. Daniel gripped the key tightly. Who? The voice began to cry. Those who are still waiting. Suddenly, from the other side of the door, something struck it hard. Bang! Daniel stumbled back. Bang! The door shook. Bang! A crack split open near the lock. Daniel bolted toward the chapel exit. But before he could reach it, he heard something that stopped him cold. A second voice. Then a third. Then dozens, all calling his name. Daniel. 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 He turned slowly. The door was still shut, but now something was written on it that hadn't been there before. We already know where you live. Daniel fled the convent without looking back. He climbed into his truck, locked the doors, and took a deep breath. Then he saw the passenger seat. A woman was sitting there. Elena Vargas. Her face was covered in soot, her eyes wide open, and she held a photograph between her hands. Daniel recognized it, a photo of his house, taken from the street. And behind her, in the back seat of the truck, sat three more figures, a man, a woman, and an elderly man dressed as a priest. All three stared at Daniel in silence. Elena slowly raised the photograph. It showed Daniel asleep in his own bedroom. The image had been taken that very night. Elena whispered, "You still don't understand." Daniel couldn't move. "What?" The woman pointed toward the convent. The door was never abandoned. Daniel glanced at the rearview mirror. The three strangers were gone. The back seat sat empty. But on the fogged window, a phrase had been written with a fingertip, "Tomorrow it will be you who opens it." Daniel didn't go home that night. He drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, constantly checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Elena again, or the priest, or any of those figures. But no one appeared. When he finally parked in front of the newspaper building, it was nearly 11 at night. Arturo was still there. What happened? Daniel got out without answering, walked inside, and set the key down on the desk. "I need you to see something." Arturo studied the key. "Where did you find it?" "At the convent." "What does it open?" "I don't know." Daniel pulled the photo from his pocket and placed it in front of him, the image of his own house. Arturo picked it up. "When was this taken?" "Last night." "That's impossible." "I know." Arturo looked at the photo again. Daniel pointed to a window. "That's my bedroom." "Who took the photograph?" "I don't know." "And the woman?" Daniel shook his head. "Her name was Elena Vargas." Arturo went pale. "Daniel." "What?" "Elena died in 1989. Silence fell over the office. Daniel already knew. But hearing it out loud made everything feel far more real. "Then tell me what you saw." Arturo took a deep breath. "First I need to show you something." He opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a folder far thicker than the last. "My father kept this for years." Daniel began going through the documents, municipal reports, photographs, testimonies, floor plans. But something caught his eye immediately, a typewritten page. Basement inspection report. Dated 1974. Daniel began to read. Workers had found a hidden room beneath the chapel, a room that appeared on no official floor plan. The entrance was concealed behind a false wall. According to the report, there were candle remains, personal belongings, and old photographs. But no bodies. Only names. The same names that appeared on the door. Daniel turned the page. The next report was from 1981. The room had been discovered again, 7 years later. But this time something was different, a bed, a table, and a recorder. The recorder held a tape. Daniel looked up. "Where is it?" Arturo shook his head. "I don't know." "Did anyone ever listen to it?" "My father did." "What did it say?" Arturo went quiet. "It said names." "What names?" "Names of people who were still alive." Daniel felt a deep chill. "And what happened to them?" Arturo looked at him. "They disappeared." Daniel closed the folder. "I want to go back." "No." "Arturo." "No. I have to find that room." "What for?" Daniel raised the key. "Because I think this opens the door." Arturo stayed quiet for a moment. Then he grabbed his coat. "I'm coming with you." They went back to the convent shortly after midnight. The rain had returned. The gate stood open. Daniel looked at Arturo. I left it closed. Maybe someone went in. Yes. They walked together down the corridor, Arturo's flashlight sweeping the walls. They reached the chapel. The door at the end was still there. But something had changed. The names had multiplied, now there were more than 100. Daniel searched for his own. It was still there. And below it, another name had appeared, Arturo Velasco. Arturo dropped his flashlight. What the hell? Daniel looked at him. It wasn't there before. This is only the beginning. Part 2 of The Door at the End is coming very soon. Subscribe to Don't Look Back so you don't miss it.